with the theme Paradigm Shift in Indian Real Estate. Ladies and gentlemen, India is at the cusp of a real estate revolution. Real estate sector has manifested this revolution in the form of emerging or alternate asset classes like co-living, senior living, co-working, student housing, data centers, etc. Changing lifestyle and evolving businesses have certainly created a need for these subsectors. The transaction to these assets are truly interesting to observe, and all of this will have a cascading effect on the various industries sectors as well. But in totality, real estate is likely to get benefited the most. Now, why, how, and of it, we're going to hear it from our distinguished panel during this session. We have a very eminent panel present over us, today with us, Mr. Pradeep Agarwalji, Chairman and Whole-time Director, Signature Global India Limited, Dr. Nikhil Sikri, Co-founder and CEO of Zolo Stays, Mr. Harsh Binani, Co-founder, SmartWorks. The session will be moderated by the industry veteran, Mr. Anuj Puri, Chairman and founder Atmanirbhar, who himself is a RE expert and will bring his knowledge and understanding to the table during discussions. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Sachin. What a delight to be here on a Friday afternoon. Looking forward to the weekend. You put together a beautiful panel. A very close friend of mine, Mr. Pradeep Agarwal, who is also the chairman of Signature Global. Nikhil, with whom I've had an opportunity to interact earlier, who is the co-founder and CEO of Zolo. We're going to talk a little bit more about Zolo, what they do, and what was the reason for Zolo to be formed. And then Harsh, who is the co-founder of SmartWorks. The topic that we're going to discuss between the three gentlemen is the traditional asset classes that we have. How are they getting reinvented? And, what are the alternatives that are becoming mainstream today? These largely have been traditional real estate, and the way, things are moving. All three of the panelists, whether it's Pradeep ji, Nikhil, or Harsh, they have brought newness into this concept. Pradeep, I'm going to start with you first. I'm a big fan of your company, the way that you've been able to transition into affordable housing, which was like a touch me not. Nobody was wanting to get into that. Nobody knew how to make profit out of this. And it was not a mainstream for anyone, more so in the NCR. We had seen premium, we've seen luxury, but we haven't really seen affordable housing. And as an alternate asset class within the residential, you've actually made this as a mainstream. And, Signature Global is going public over the next few months with affordable housing as the mainstream. So two questions, Pradeep. One, what was the thought when you decided to set up Signature Global a few years ago? And I must also say, Pradeep is a first generation entrepreneur, and it's not what he's inherited from his dad. He's inherited a lot of good things and good looks from his dad, but certainly the company is set up by him and his brothers. And the second, Pradeep, is how do you make money in affordable housing?
So first of all, Anuj ji, आपका बहुत-बहुत शुक्रिया आप इस पैनल में मुझे बुलाने के लिए। आपने कहा कि कैसे सिग्नेचर को आपने स्टार्ट किया, सिग्नेचर ग्लोबल। आई थिंक सो, मुझे लगता है कि इसका सबसे बड़ा जो श्रेय कहीं ना कहीं वो गवर्नमेंट को जाता है। उसका बहुत बड़ा रीजन है कि अगर आप पिछले 70 सालों की बात करें तो कोई भी गवर्नमेंट अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग को लेके कभी इतना सीरियस आपको नजर नहीं आई। हाउसिंग फॉर ऑल इस गवर्नमेंट का ऐसा मिशन था जिसने पहली बार लोगों में ये उम्मीद जगाई कि हर परिवार को एक घर मिलना चाहिए, और कहीं ना कहीं वो पॉलिसीज ग्राउंड पर नजर भी आई। अगर प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना की बात करें तो लगभग 1,22,00,000 से ज्यादा घर गवर्नमेंट ने अभी तक अप्रूव किए हैं। आप समझिए कि इतना बड़ा टास्क है, क्योंकि बहुत सारे घरों की जरूरत है, लेकिन पॉलिसीज फाइल्स पर बनती हैं, ग्राउंड्स पर उतरने में बड़ा चैलेंज रहता है।
बिल्कुल सही बोला।
लेकिन उनके ऊपर बैक टू बैक रिपोर्टिंग लेना, उनका फॉलोअप करना, एंड ऐसी जो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट हैं उनको एडवाइस करना कि आप ऐसी पॉलिसीज बनाएं जो कॉमन मैन के सराउंडिंग होती हो, ना कि ऐसी कि जो देश में 5% जनता है उसके लिए पॉलिसी ना बनाए, जो बैलेंस की 95% पॉपुलेशन है उसके लिए पॉलिसीज बनाई जाए। तो आई थिंक सो उसका एक बहुत बड़ा रीजन रहा कि शायद बाय लक, या कह सकते हैं कि जिस सेगमेंट को हमने चुना, गवर्नमेंट ने उस सेगमेंट को बहुत ज्यादा एक हाथों हाथ लिया और जरूरत को समझा कि एक कॉमन मैन को कैसे घर दिया जा सके। और शायद यही एक रीजन है कि लोगों ने अभी तक इस सेगमेंट को ऐसे टेस्ट नहीं किया था, और शायद बाय लक हमने उसे टेस्ट कर लिया और शायद लोगों को ये सेगमेंट पसंद भी आया, और जो जरूरत थी घरों की शायद हम वो पूरी भी कर पाए। आज अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग में आपने जैसा दूसरा सवाल पूछा कि इसमें प्रॉफिट मार्जिन कैसे बन रहा है, देखिए अफोर्डेबल
बहुत कम को देखा है जो प्रॉफिट सस्टेन्ड बेसिस पे बना पाए, प्रदीप जी।
राइट। सो क्या है कि आप जब किसी भी चीज, किसी भी बिजनेस मॉडल को बनाते हैं तो वो बिजनेस मॉडल सिर्फ कुछ प्रोजेक्ट्स पे या कुछ फ्लैट्स के ऊपर डिसाइड नहीं कर सकता। आपको एज ए इंडस्ट्री उस बिजनेस को लेना पड़ता है कि आने वाले 10 साल में या 20 साल में इस बिजनेस में क्या क्या हो सकता है। आप देखिए कि इस देश के अंदर जितने डेवलपर्स हैं उसमें से 95% डेवलपर जो है वो जो 5% पॉपुलेशन है उसके लिए काम कर रहे हैं। जो 5% डेवलपर हैं केवल वही 95% पॉपुलेशन के लिए काम कर रहे हैं। सो आप समझिए उसका बेसिक रीजन है क्योंकि प्रॉफिट मार्जिन बहुत थिन है, लेकिन अगर उसे क्वांटम पर किया जाए तो मुझे लगता है ये एक फैक्ट्री मॉडल बन जाता है, जहां आप इसे होम मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंपनी की तरह देख सकते हैं। क्योंकि आज का जो कोई भी किसी भी इंडस्ट्री की बात करें, जहां आप ज्यादा प्रोडक्शन करते हैं, ज्यादा वॉल्यूम में काम करते हैं, तो जो आपका प्रॉफिट मार्जिन है वो बेशक लेसर हो लेकिन फिर भी क्वांटम उसका बहुत बड़ा होता है। आज मैं आपको अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग के कुछ नंबर जो डीआरएचपी मैंने फाइल किया उसके अंदर भी कुछ नंबर्स हैं जो मैंने डाले हैं, क्योंकि लोगों को बताने के लिए कि क्या एक्चुअली इसमें प्रॉफिट मार्जिन बन सकता है नहीं बन सकता, क्योंकि हमेशा ये चैलेंज रहा है कि प्रॉफिट मार्जिन बनता है नहीं। अगर मैं अफोर्डेबल, जो कोर अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग है जिसका प्राइस रेंज लगभग 25 लाख रुपए के नियर अबाउट है, तो जो रेजी है उस रेजी के अंदर जो प्रॉफिट मार्जिन है वो क्लियरली 16% के नियर अबाउट का प्रॉफिट मार्जिन हमने उसमें शो किया है कि हमने केवल रेजी पार्ट के अंदर 16% का प्रॉफिट कमाया है, ग्रॉस मार्जिन। एंड उसके बाद उसमें कंपोनेंट है कमर्शियल का, जो गवर्नमेंट ने सब्सिडाइज किया है, बिकॉज आज किसी पॉलिसी के अंदर प्राइस को ब्लॉक किया गया है हरियाणा गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से, तो उसको कंपनसेट करने के लिए उन्होंने कुछ तो एफएआर में बेनिफिट दिया है, कुछ एक कमर्शियल कंपोनेंट को डाला है जो पूरी लैंड पार्सल का 8% के नियर अबाउट होता है। तो अगर, और वो फ्री टू सेल है, जो रेजी है वो एक रैशनिंग है उस प्राइस की, और लेकिन जो कमर्शियल कंपोनेंट है वो फ्री टू सेल है। सो दोनों को अगर हम यानी मिलाएं तो जो प्रॉफिट मार्जिन है वो लगभग 24 से 25% के नियर अबाउट हमारा बनता है। तो आप ये देखिए, या
प्रदीप जी सॉरी, इसमें मैं ये पूछना चाहूंगा, ये वाला स्पेसिफिक एक स्टेट को है पॉलिसी के ये नेशनल पॉलिसी है जो आप बोल रहे हो? क्योंकि ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट आपने बोला कि प्रॉफिट उसलिए बन रहा है क्योंकि इसके अंदर मेरे को थोड़ा फ्री सेल का एरिया जो कमर्शियल है, और कमर्शियल की वैल्यू बहुत हाई होती है और अफोर्डेबल की रिस्ट्रिक्टेड रहती है प्राइसिंग। तो ये नेशनल पॉलिसी में ये है कि ये सिर्फ हरियाणा या कोई ऐसी स्टेट गवर्नमेंट का है?
सो देखिए, जो लैंड है वो सब्जेक्ट स्टेट्स का है। सो ऐसे में हर स्टेट अपनी अपनी पॉलिसी डिसाइड कर सकता है। आज जो हरियाणा है अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग में एक रोल मॉडल बन गया है। इवन बहुत सारे न्यूज पेपर्स ने भी इसको कोट किया है कि हरियाणा की अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग पॉलिसी वन ऑफ द बेस्ट पॉलिसी है। ये पॉलिसी स्पेसिफिकली हरियाणा के लिए है। तो ये नेशनल पॉलिसी नहीं है, लेकिन क्योंकि हाउसिंग फॉर ऑल जो है वो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से चल रहा है, जिसमें प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना की तरफ से होम लोन पर सब्सिडी दी जा रही है। एक वो भी बहुत बड़ा कंपोनेंट है, 2,76,000 रुपए का बेनिफिट टोटल, जिस यूनिट की टोटल कीमत 25 लाख रुपए है, उस पे अगर 2,67,000 रुपए का अगर क्रेडिट मिलता है किसी पर्सन को, तो उसके लिए एक बहुत बड़ी बात है। उसके ऊपर लगने वाली जो जीएसटी है उसकी कॉस्ट घटाकर केवल 1% कर दी है उन्होंने। आप समझो कि ये सारी चीजें ऐसी हैं जो कहीं ना कहीं कॉमन मैन के मकान के जो ड्रीम है उसको पूरा करती हैं। और सबसे बड़ी बात, क्योंकि लास्ट टू लास्ट वीक एक अनाउंसमेंट फिर से हुआ है कि जो सीएलएसएस वाली जो स्कीम थी, प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना वाली स्कीम थी, उसको 31 मार्च 2022 के बाद कैरी नहीं किया गया था बजट में, तो अभी लास्ट टू लास्ट भी गवर्नमेंट ने फिर से उसे अनाउंस कर दिया है कि अगले 2 साल के लिए फिर से उसको एक्सटेंड किया जा रहा है। तो ऐसे लोग जो अपना घर बनाना चाहते हैं उन लोगों के लिए एक बहुत बड़ी न्यूज है, और मुझे लगता है गवर्नमेंट ने इसने बहुत बड़ा रोल प्ले किया है।
मेरा एक 2 और सवाल है प्रदीप जी। एक तो आप एनसीआर में बहुत डोमिनेंट हैं, एनसीआर में भी क्या बोलूं मैं, गुड़गांव में ही बहुत डोमिनेंट है, आपको टाइम ही नहीं मिल रहा गुड़गांव से बाहर निकलने का। तो इज देयर अ प्लान सिग्नेचर ग्लोबल एक्सपैंड करेगा आउटसाइड द गुड़गांव रीजन? एंड सेकंड इज प्रदीप जी, इज जिसमें मैं निखिल को भी बाद में लाना चाहूंगा, इज ये जो रेंटल हाउसिंग है, आपको लगता है कि अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग में भी रेंटल हाउसिंग का कोई एक चीज आ सकती है, कोई कंसेप्ट आ सकता है? बिकॉज देखिए, आपने बिल्कुल सही बोला, हाउसिंग फॉर ऑल गवर्नमेंट ने बहुत अच्छा डिलीवर किया है, बट हाउसिंग फॉर ऑल आल्सो कैन मीन इसके रेंटल हाउसिंग भी आप दे सकते हैं उसके अंदर। इस तो ऐसे देखने को नहीं मिला कि अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग के अंदर कोई ऐसे बना रहा हो जैसे सिग्नेचर ग्लोबल जैसा, कि पूरी की पूरी बिल्डिंग बना रहे हैं और सिर्फ वो रेंट पे देना चाहते हैं को लिविंग को या पीजी एज हॉस्टल्स।
सो देखिए, इन टर्म्स ऑफ अगर नंबर की बात करें तो आज दिल्ली एनसीआर में हर 5th फ्लैट सिग्नेचर ग्लोबल से सेल हो रहा है, मार्केट शेयर की अगर हम बात करें। सो रीजन बहुत सिंपल है कि आप क्वांटम बना रहे हैं, लोगों को राइट प्राइस, राइट लोकेशन, राइट साइज डिलीवर कर रहे हैं। दिल्ली एनसीआर मेरा कोर मार्केट है। आज गुरुग्राम या सराउंडिंग द गुरुग्राम मेरा फोकस है, बिकॉज बहुत सारी अपॉर्चुनिटीज यहाँ आज अवेलेबल हैं। लेकिन ऐसा नहीं है कि मुझे दिल्ली एनसीआर के अदर एरियाज में काम करने में या अपॉर्चुनिटी को देखने में मेरे लिए कोई माइंड में ब्लॉक है कि मुझे नहीं जाना। मुझे लगता है दिल्ली एनसीआर में नोएडा, चाहे ग्रेटर नोएडा, राजनगर एक्सटेंशन, ऐसे और भी एरिया, इवन हरियाणा में भी फरीदाबाद, सोनीपत, और भी बहुत सारे एरिया जैसे हैं जो मेरे लिए नेक्स्ट टारगेटेड एरिया हैं। दिल्ली एनसीआर जरूर मैं कह सकता हूं कि हम फोकस्ड हैं, कि अभी दिल्ली एनसीआर से बाहर जाने में शायद मुझे लगता है बहुत टाइम लगेगा, शायद ना भी जा पाए अगले 5 साल में। लेकिन अगर आप दिल्ली एनसीआर की बात करें तो हम ऑलवेज ओपन है, अगर कोई भी अपॉर्चुनिटी हमें मिलती है तो डेफिनेटली हम उसे ग्रैब करेंगे। दूसरा सवाल आप प्लीज दोबारा से।
रेंटल हाउसिंग का प्रदीप।
सो देखिए, रेंटल हाउसिंग एक बहुत बेहतरीन कॉन्सेप्ट है। फर्क केवल इतना है कि आज अगर अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग की भी बात करें तो जो मैं फंड रेज जब करता हूं तो फंड रेजिंग में जो अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग की जो रेजिंग है और जो लग्जरी हाउसिंग की रेजिंग है उसमें कोई डिफरेंस नहीं है। मुझे कोई भी ऐसा इंसेंटिव गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से या किसी ऐसी फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन की तरफ से नहीं है कि जिससे मैं उसको किसी और तरीके से बना पाऊं। मुझे लगता है गवर्नमेंट इसमें बहुत बड़ा रोल प्ले कर सकती है। आज जब बॉन्ड जो हैं वो 6-6.5% में अगर लगाए जा सकते हैं या लिए जा सकते हैं, तो ऐसी अगर कोई चीपर कैपिटल अगर अवेलेबल होगी तो रेंटल हाउसिंग एक बहुत बड़ा मार्केट बन सकता है। लेकिन डेवलपर के लिए वो कभी भी बिजनेस मॉडल नहीं बन पाएगा, क्योंकि डेवलपर का काम है केवल बिल्डिंग को बनाना और उसको सेल करना। अगर डेवलपर उसको रेंट पर लगाने जाएगा तो उसके लिए ना वो यील्ड बन सकती, ना वो उसके लिए मैकेनिज्म बन सकता। उन लोगों के लिए सकता है जो लोग रीट में काम करते हैं, रीट्स के लिए एक बहुत बड़ा बिजनेस है, या ऐसी बड़ी गवर्नमेंट पीएसयू जो बॉन्ड्स में अपना पैसा लगाती हैं, उन लोगों के लिए एक बहुत बेहतरीन मॉडल बन सकता है। एज ए डेवलपर मैं केवल उनको बना सकता हूं, बनाकर डिलीवर कर सकता हूं। उनको आना अल्टीमेट उन्हीं लोगों को पड़ेगा जो चीपर कैपिटल जिन लोगों के पास है।
बड़ा अच्छा सेगवे आपने निखिल को दिया है। निखिल, प्रदीप जी बोल रहे मैं बना सकता हूँ, डिलीवर कर सकता हूँ, लैंड खरीद सकता हूँ, सब कुछ कर सकता हूँ, बट मेरे लिए मैथ ऐड नहीं करता if I go into the co-living. So 2 questions, Nikhil. One is, what was the thought of Zolo? I love it. I love the concept as well. Definitely COVID में issues आए हैं. Hopefully, COVID is behind us. So एक तो वो है कि what was the thought process behind Zolo? Second, प्रदीप जी ने जो ये बोला कि भाई इसकी commercial कैसे stack up होते हैं, yield stack up ही नहीं होती as a developer.
बिल्कुल। सो थॉट प्रोसेस बिहाइंड जोलो अनुज वाज वेरी सिंपल कि एक बहुत बड़ी अनऑर्गेनाइज्ड मार्केट है एग्जिस्टिंग पीजीज़ की और हॉस्टल्स की, which currently provides a suboptimal quality of living. Prima facie, क्योंकि the people who are operating are very single sort of mom and pop shops. तो आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि दे डोंट हैव द इंटेंट टू प्रोवाइड गुड क्वालिटी, आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि वो कर नहीं सकते हैं, वो स्ट्रक्चर ही अलाउ नहीं करता. अगर आप एक आदमी हो कितना ही कर लोगे. यू कैनॉट थिंक अबाउट डिज़ाइन, यू कैनॉट थिंक अबाउट स्ट्रक्चर्स, यू कैनॉट थिंक अबाउट, आप अपने ऑपरेशनल एफिशिएंसीज नहीं ला सकते हैं. सो देयर इज अ स्ट्रक्चरल प्रॉब्लम. आई एम नॉट ब्लेमिंग द पर्सन, इट्स जस्ट द स्ट्रक्चर विच इज स्लाइटली डिफरेंट. So what we took as a mandate was to organize this unorganized industry. It's a very, very large, Bangalore BBMP had issued pre-COVID numbers. I haven't gotten the new numbers post-COVID because a lot of licenses people sort of submitted back. So there were 13,000 licenses for PGs. If you take average, even 30-40 rooms per PG, although generally averages are slightly higher, to be the number is mind-boggling. So we are talking about some more than 1 million people staying in this setup already just in Bangalore, right? So we basically took up the goal for organizing this unorganized industry, and reason to come here, ये थोड़ी सी लंबी स्टोरी है. I'll sum it up short. So I had one venture in healthcare because I mean it was a natural extension. I was a doctor and healthcare IT से आया था मैं, and I mean so the natural extension worked out, but for some reason we didn't want to continue there. But those reasons are not part of this webinar. Someday else. Then we started education because fundamentally we are very educationist family per se. Like I was rank 4 in the country. My brother was rank 1 in the country. My mother has 4 degrees. So we have this habit of education, or whatever you can say, passion for education in our family.
You must be a misfit for the real estate industry.
नहीं सर, जब बाहर से आते हो ना तो यू कैन सी लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स दैट अदर पीपल कांट सी. सो आई फाइंड माई सेल्फ अ ब्यूटिफुल फिट. के
आई एग्री विद
धनिया की कमी थी, वो धनिया हम है. So then we moved to housing per se because we wanted to stick to some fundamental sectors: health, education. Education mein we couldn't get the product right. Health mein we got the product right. For some reasons we didn't continue. Education mein we just couldn't get the product right. Then we moved to housing, and housing mein this problem really fascinated when we saw the quality of living and what we can do via technology, via operational efficiency, search and discovery. What you see is what you get. So there are various layers of value add that you can keep doing. Community, because as time progresses by, somebody who comes here tends to get lonely. We're living alone. You don't know who's next, who's right, who's left, which is a problem, a challenge even in our multifamily apartments as well. Like I barely know my neighbors, my society. I know few, but this is a challenge even which proceeds beyond bachelor life, so to say. It sort of goes in the family life as well these days. So these are things that we thought that we can add value. With God's grace, I would say we were lucky that we got some early success. COVID, when it was going on, obviously it felt as if the world has come to an end, and there was no reason which we thought that we will survive this. But I'm very thankful to my team which stuck by, and eventually we came through. And as of now, I'm very proud to say that we are doing really well. In fact, co-living as a vertical is EBITDA positive. Student housing as a vertical will be EBITDA positive in precisely 22 days because colleges will open. As of now, there is nobody there. But the moment people come back in next 20 to 22 days is what the estimate is, that vertical should be EBITDA positive. So we're seeing profitability. We are seeing customers being discerning in terms of quality. Earlier, the mindset was also slightly different pre-COVID. People used to think home is just for, I mean, especially I'm talking about this age group. I'm not talking for the age group which has kids and family. कि सोना ही तो है यार, और क्या करना है, तो क्या फर्क पड़ता है, गद्दा जैसा भी हो चलेंगे. Now it's gotten much more complicated. अब आपको हाइब्रिड काम करना है तो कभी घर से कॉल्स लेनी है, तो वाईफाई कनेक्शन, क्वालिटी, प्लस कोविड ने थोड़ा सा डर बिठा दिया है हल्का सा कि यार जीवन कंडीशन थोड़ी अच्छी होनी चाहिए, ऐसे मजाक में कहीं जान ही ना चली जाए. तो so for that 1,000-2,000 rupees, people have become very less fussy. So we are seeing that our ARPUs have moved significantly up pre-COVID. During COVID के हिसाब से तो चलो बहुत ज़्यादा up है, but pre-COVID to post-COVID ARPUs have moved up. So there is a fundamental shift. एंड एक क्वेश्चन मैं प्रदीप जी के लिए आंसर करना चाहूँगा कि आई एम 100% विद यू सर कि आपका काम बनाना है, बेचना नहीं. तो हमारी एक सब्सिडरी है जी एसिड्स जो यही काम करती है कि आप बनाइए, हम बेचेंगे इन्वेस्टर्स को. सो वी हैव ऑलरेडी सोल्ड सम 130 करोड़ वर्थ ऑफ प्रोजेक्ट्स. एंड जिस एरियाज में हमने बेचा है, एंड इफ प्रदीप जी आप मौका दें तो मैं आपको इंट्रोड्यूस कर दूंगा टीम के साथ. वी हैव बीन द फास्टेस्ट प्रोजेक्ट सेलर्स इन दैट एरिया. इनफैक्ट वी लॉन्च वन प्रोजेक्ट इन पुणे just I think 65 days back, including the rains. And rains में आप तो जानते हैं अब रियल एस्टेट में कि बेचना थोड़ा मुश्किल होता है बिकॉज साइट विजिट्स थोड़ी कम हो जाती हैं. इंक्लूडिंग द रेंज वी सोल्ड 100 यूनिट्स.
And Nikhil, just coming back to the question that Pradeep ji asked is, how do the yields work for you? Because a developer makes it, and if he rents it out to you, how would the yield work for him?
So far, we've not been able to crack design efficiency to a level where a developer can hold. क्योंकि developer का cost of borrowing is very high, but retail investor का cost of borrowing is low, because home loan है और ये affordable units हैं सारी जो हम बेचते हैं co-living, ये छोटे होते हैं. तो these are affordable units, तो लोन और थोड़ा सस्ता पड़ता है. I'm not talking about properly EWS units of large apartments, but these are smaller sizes. तो आपका उसमें थोड़े थोड़े benefits हैं, बहुत ज़्यादा फर्क नहीं है, but थोड़ा cost of construction कम है. तो this जो retail investor है उसके लिए holding एक बहुत प्यारा investment है, क्योंकि today retail investor के लिए investment product नहीं है market में. अगर रिटेल इन्वेस्टमेंट आज एक इन्वेस्टर प्रोडक्ट खरीदना चाहता है तो डेवलपर के पास एक सिंपल प्लेन वनीला प्रोडक्ट है कि सर आप इसको खरीद लीजिए और इसको भाड़े पे चढ़ा देना, और फिर वो खरीदना चढ़ाना, और उसमें से नॉर्मल यील्ड भी 2% निकलती है नॉर्मल डिजाइन वाले फ्लैट्स में.
करेक्ट.
तो 2.5% में इट्स नॉट वर्थ इट फॉर एनीवन. सो जिन प्रोजेक्ट्स में हम डे 1 से इन्वॉल्व होते हैं, वेयर वी ब्रिंग इन डिजाइन एफिशिएंसी. सो वी हैव अ डिजाइन टीम, वी हैव डन अ लॉट ऑफ वर्क विद गुड आर्किटेक्चरल ग्रुप्स. वी हैव, आई मीन अगर आप कहें मेरे पास प्लॉट सीधा है, टेढ़ा है, लंबा है, एल शेप्ड है, वी शेप्ड है, सो वी हैव सॉर्ट ऑफ डन डिजाइंस फॉर ऑल. कि आप बताओ किस तरह का प्रोजेक्ट है, किस तरह का प्लॉट है, इसको इस तरह से हम डिजाइन एफिशिएंटली बना सकते हैं. So once we get early on, so we realized that we were making a mistake of getting to developers late. So now we started working with them pre-launch.
So you can bring efficiency into it.
Yes, efficiency via design and different way of thinking, like soft wall movement. Lot of developers have this fear कि सर अगर कल को ये किराए पे नहीं चढ़ा तो मेरा कस्टमर दुखी हो जाएगा. So we made designs where you can move soft walls here and there and you can revert back to your typical family living. कि अगर आपको ये डर है, क्योंकि एक डेवलपर का जो कस्टमर है वो मोस्ट डेवलपर्स है वर्ड ऑफ माउथ एज अ की सेल. सो दे डोंट वांट टू टेक अ रिस्क कि यार 3 साल बाद 4 साल बाद आपका को-लिविंग वाला बिजनेस तो हो गया बंद, मान लो. मतलब ऑब्वियसली अगर कोविड में हम निकल के बाहर आ गए सारी दुनिया तो आगे बंद तो नहीं होगा, बट थ्योरेटिकल वरी है, इसको सॉल्व करना है, इसका आंसर होना चाहिए. तो वी मेड डिजाइंस वेयर यू कैन मूव सॉफ्ट वॉल्स हियर एंड देयर. तो 1.5 लाख रुपए का खर्चा है तो घर वापस रिस्टोर हो जाता है. We made multiple designs and we come in pre-launch. So for a retail investor, 5 to 6% interest is amazing, is yielding amazing. For a developer 6% में कोई मजा नहीं. So we have these models where retail investors are buying like hotcake. In fact, our success became our enemy. हमने last year जब 2 projects लिए थे, we thought हमें 1.5 साल लगेगा बेचने में, अभी आराम से और लेंगे, बात करेंगे, वो 3 महीने में सब बिक गया. Wow. For 5 months we were sitting idle. Our team was just stitching projects. We had nothing to sell because we were like, it's real estate, right? You can't just go to somebody के सर एक project बता दो एक और बेचेंगे. So it took us 5 months, 6 months to find people who had already sort of gone through plan sanctions so that we can quickly move forward. And then as I said, 60 days back we had our first launch, then we have second launch next month, third launch next month. But for 5.5 months we had no work. I mean, we had work to stitch, but from a sales side we were doing nothing. So retail guys have that appetite to hold because the yields are still not in the zone of 8, 9, 10, 11, where it will make a lot of sense for developers to hold, or because it's a uncertain sort of new sector. Even at 8, institutions might be a little jittery. They would want 9, 9.5 going in, or even 10 for that matter. It's not it's not a tested class of Blackstone IBM combination that you can even go in at 7. तो वो 6.5, 7 तो हम कर सकते हैं, बट वो लेगा नहीं कुछ. रिटेल खुशी खुशी ले रहा है क्योंकि 2 के बदले 5-6 तो इज लाइक 3x रिटर्न, राइट? मुझे कहीं तो अपना पैसा लगाना था और रिटेल वाले के पास और कोई ऑप्शंस नहीं है. सो दैट इज वर्किंग. सो दैट्स हाउ वी आर मेकिंग यील्ड्स वर्क. आई एम बीइंग वेरी कैंडिड हियर कि वी कांट मेक इट वर्क फॉर डेवलपर, वी कांट मेक इट वर्क फॉर अ फंड सो फार, but we can make it work for a retail guy like anything.
Understood. My final question, Nikhil, is that which is the city which is most vibrant for you? Is it Bangalore?
That's a very tough question, Anuj. क्योंकि actually the phenomena is quite strong everywhere. But if a gun to head sort of prioritization, then Bangalore, yes, Bangalore would be the largest existing supply and largest incoming supply. Next would be Hyderabad. Third will be Pune. Fourth, from incoming supply, Hyderabad. Existing supply, Pune. And fourth will be NCR, and then it will be Chennai.
So basically, you're following the IT, absorption rate, because Bangalore is the most versatile and highest absorption of offices, and second is Hyderabad, followed by Pune, and then followed by NCR. So, the co-living model perhaps is similar to where the office leasing is happening.
Yes, office leasing coupled with opportunities for low-cost residential. Like Mumbai has a lot of offices coming up.
But
unfortunately, the cost of capital of land is so high that co-living is more or less an unviable phenomenon in Mumbai. So we've even tried our hands on some SRAs. There also it's a miss and hit sort of in Mumbai.
Yes.
So office leasing coupled with opportunity of reasonable land prices nearby for residential, that sort of cuts the entire game wherever that happens, and urban migration obviously. That's why offices are getting leased in some sense. That's the play that we can see across the board.
Harsh, Nikhil mentioned about COVID, and when COVID hit, I thought just like with real estate, we had in the first 3 or 4 months problem. Co-living, I think the problem continued for much longer. I thought that the co-working guys would be having a huge amount of problem, and suddenly co-working did the best. We were like, wow, what happened here? We thought that the co-working was going to get so negatively impacted. And it did. For the first 4, 5, 6 months, it did. But the way you guys have bounced back, and as SmartWorks, you've done an exceptional job in navigating through the first 4, 5, 6 months. But it looks like as if there is sort of no end to co-working, whether it's enterprise solution, whether it is startups, whether it's retail customers who are wanting seats. So what changed the mind of the occupiers during this COVID to just go for co-working?
No, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Anuj, and finally, great to meet you virtually, and great to learn insights from Pradeep ji and Nikhil as well. So essentially, it's a great question, and we keep getting asked this often that, hey, look, COVID has actually acted as a vaccine booster in the entire industry, and predominantly everyone seems to be doing extremely well at this point of time. But when you closely start analyzing that what really made up this entire growth curve, which has been so rapid in the last few months, I will humbly submit that COVID is not the creator of this industry. Co-working was doing extremely well prior to COVID in this entire phase of 2016 to 2019 up until, but by then most players were trying to figure out what's the right product market fit, which are the right things to go to, what type of clientele should you cater to, should you work with enterprises, should you work with startups, what sort of experience should you offer it within a floor of a building, or should you lease the entire building? So I would almost say this initial phase was a phase of discovery. Obviously SmartWorks took a very bold stance, which was to lease large independent campuses, right, from unorganized, unbranded landlords, and focus primarily on enterprises. And that I feel, was a major decision which got vindicated in a post-COVID environment. Because again, as we think about the co-working segment, it's often understood to be catering more to startups. But the reality is that the co-working operators who were focused more towards startups actually suffered the most during COVID, because obviously with startups, there was a run of light towards work from home and safer pastures, because the uncertainty at that point of time, no one really knew how it would play out. But boy, if you talk about the large enterprise segment, this has become the new normal. as we start to think about hybrid workplace and how the workplace culture is now evolving into distributed offices. Even if you're doing work from home, you still need workplaces. We increasingly are starting to see large enterprises. And when I talk about large enterprises, they would include Fortune 500 companies, Indian MNCs, a lot of them we work with, who now have come out in open, really ensuring that a large part of their portfolio will be coming to flexible workspaces, less of co-working, I would say, because they realize that the new workplace will require a new normal situation. And obviously, given the confines of this, as we've seen this play out in multiple industries, that the larger players tend to benefit disproportionately because, as you mentioned, the first 5-6 months were fairly frantic for us as well. While I can talk with a lot of optimism at this point of time, and even we have a fairly similar problem as Nikhil was alluding to, that frankly, the way the CAP product has been selling like hotcakes, we frankly don't have too much inventory to sell. And any new inventory which we would have anticipated, for example, we leased the world's largest standalone facility in Bangalore, because obviously you cannot ignore Bangalore. If you have to be relevant in the space, then Bangalore has to be. And that 700,000 square foot facility, the handover is only next month, but more than 50% of that is already leased out.
Wow.
As we speak. So from that particular aspect, and given the fact that you already have a lot of large enterprises in your fold, you're really farming a lot of new acquisitions with them while the market is adopting this and increasing their allocation. That would, safely sum up that, we're just entering into the golden phase for this industry. And in the next few years, we are still a drop in the ocean. The India RE space is about 1 billion square foot. Flex space together is only about 40 million square foot. So easily expect that another 50 to 70 million square foot would be added in the next 3 to 5 years. And obviously the larger players will tend to disproportionately benefit more than others.
Harsh, I've been in this industry for long. I had not expected the enterprise solution to pick up so beautifully the way that it has. Did you anticipate?
Well, to be honest, we've always been driven by, the age-old belief in India, which Pradeep ji also briefly touched upon, that our psyche is towards low-cost functionality. And the enterprise segment is a segment that a lot of players have been trying to attract. The pricing might vary, the product might vary. And frankly, we always had this insight that if we are able to price this product well, and today, across India, our average would be less than $100 a desk. At $100 a desk, if you can still make profitable margins and create a unit economics which works for the enterprise and informs them that, hey, look, you're getting at least 25 to 30% cheaper cost than if you were to do this entire experience yourself. And that's not about office and fit outs. It's about the entire experience, right? From your FM to electricity to the more value added services like concierge, travel, just so that the enterprise employee feels more happy and productive. If you're able to create that narrative that, hey, look, this experience is going to make your employees more happy and productive, trust me, India is slightly slow to adopt. But when it does, and we've seen this analogous example play out in multiple industries, right? We went straight from 2G to 4G. There's been so many such instances. When we lap it up, it just does not give the incumbent players enough time to react. And thankfully, given that we've always been enterprise focused, it doesn't come as a surprise at all. What does come as a surprise, or rather validation, is that just like Maruti or Domino's, if you make this a way of life by really pricing it right, and by offering a functional office space, India does not like a lot of frills for which you need to pay a premium. If you just do it right, there is no reason why they would not adopt it.
And which is exactly what you said, is that Pradeep ji's model is also the same. That, you need to deliver value for the customer. And, Indians, for whatever reason, we are very discerning, which is the word Nikhil used, and also very price sensitive. As a result of which, we want space or for living or for working, which is functional and not necessarily adding too much frills to it, which just adds cost to it. I mean, there is a customer for that as well, but perhaps that customer is much smaller than if you were to get into the bigger pie. My two final questions, and then Pradeep ji, I'll come back to you. Harsh, one is, do you expect consolidation in your space?
A lot of consolidation, I would imagine, in the last 12 months has already happened, largely because a lot of operators who are focused on startups, obviously it's an environment where raising funds is difficult. And obviously what's happening in the more macro space right now is not going to help otherwise. So yes, a lot of consolidation has happened and I expect that will continue happening. But the reality is that, at peak, India had about 350 operators. But you only had 4 or 5 operators cornering, more than 80% market share. So COVID has really ensured that, the big boys get separated out from the crowd. And we expect that, more than consolidation, you will start seeing, a lot of newer models or a lot of pivots towards enterprise from the existing players. And naturally, we are entering that phase where the pricing, profitability, all of that is entering into a stability mode, which is good for the entire ecosystem, investors, operators, as well as clients.
And that is what my final question was, Harsh, to you, is that is SmartWorks profitable?
We've been profitable for the last 3 years. So sometimes we get blamed for our Madu genes. Only we try to rationalize this, that this is an arbitrage game, right? Like, what do I do? For all the jazz that co-working or the product is, the reality is I just need to lease it at the cheapest and get great commercial terms. Make a product B. I have a markup on each of the suite of services in B, and I just need to sell it to C. So either I don't know how to sell or my product is not sellable. Otherwise, this is a pure arbitrage game, and that is something that we've been doing for generations. So I don't really see that as a challenge. And in fact, what is surprising is that the profitability aspect has stuck on during COVID. It took about a year for COVID to impact us. But frankly, where we are now, there is a lot of operating leverage play out in the business because our costs are not going up as significantly as our presence in the 12 cities we are in. And we definitely will continue this profitable path because low cost and profitability are two mantras that we've been always driven by. But we've taken a slightly contra stance that, we want to continue reducing our per seat price to our customers and pass on that benefit. Because, as Pradeep ji also mentioned earlier, we frankly believe that it's okay to make lesser profits. At this stage, we are making fairly healthy profits, but we'd be okay to lower the profit, but just increase the size of the pie so meaningfully that it becomes very lucrative and just continue de-risking the model, which we are doing every year.
Sorry, Harsh, one more question, quick. Would you ever get into the retail customers? Or would you largely continue to remain focused on enterprise solutions?
I think it's in very safe hands of Pradeep ji and Nikhil. It's a very tough nut to crack, retail customers. We tried the B2C route with startups in our first year. But quite frankly, we like being in the B2B SaaS enterprise segment. It's fairly de-risked, predictable cash flows, and we like it that way. At least for now, that is where we are, but you never say no.
And Harsh, we invested as Anurag into 2 companies which are in the co-working, MyHQ and Upflex, and we've discovered the same as well. These are sort of aggregators, but B2B is a lot more profitable in the co-working rather than doing B2C. Or if you have to do B2C, then it's more B2B2C. You sell it to an enterprise and the enterprise then may sell it back to the employees. But it is, that's the way perhaps to go. Pradeep, I'm going to come back to you for the final set of questions, which I'm going to ask Nikhil, Harsh as well. Next 3 to 5 years, how do you see your sector? Pradeep, how do you see over the next 3 to 5 years your sector?
Okay. So I think जैसा मैंने आपको कहा कि लास्ट टाइम में भी कि हाउसिंग की जो डिमांड है वो डिमांड अगले 3 या 5 साल में या 7 साल में पूरे होने वाली नहीं है। ये जो गेम है ये डिकेड्स के गेम है। आप ये मान के चलिए 2030 तक जो घरों की डिमांड है वो अर्बन एरियाज में लगभग से लगभग 1 करोड़ से ज्यादा घरों की डिमांड है। अब प्रोडक्शन देखिए कि क्या है। एवरी ईयर आज की डेट में जो प्रोडक्शन है वो लगभग 2.5 लाख घर का है ओनली। तो कैसे पूरा होगा डिमांड? यानी डिमांड सप्लाई में इतना बड़ा गैप है कि आज सिग्नेचर जैसी अगर 10 सिग्नेचर भी दिल्ली एनसीआर में हो तो उस डिमांड को पूरा नहीं कर सकते। तो आप ये मान के चलिए कि मैं कितना भी प्रोडक्शन कर लूं, मेरे लिए वो प्रोडक्शन जो है वो जस्ट ऊंट के मुंह में जीरे के बराबर है कि आप ज्यादा से ज्यादा 10,000 यूनिट ले आएंगे, 15,000 यूनिट ले आएंगे एक साल में। जो डिमांड है वो 50,000 यूनिट से भी ज्यादा की है। यानी ये मैं केवल गुरुग्राम और सराउंडिंग द गुरुग्राम की बात कर रहा हूँ, तो आप डिमांड को कैसा पूरा करेंगे? तो आप अगर अगले 5 साल की बात करें, मुझे लगता है कंपनी का बिजनेस मॉडल बिल्कुल क्लियर है, डिमांड बहुत ज्यादा है, आप जितना प्रोडक्शन कर सकते हैं उतना प्रोडक्शन करें, लेकिन क्योंकि आप किसी चीज को प्रोड्यूस कर रहे हैं वहां पे, तो एक लिमिटेशन है आपकी। आप ऐसा नहीं कर सकते कि आपने कुछ और फैक्ट्री प्लांट कर ली और वहां पे आपने प्रोडक्शन शुरू कर दिया, क्योंकि हाउसिंग एक अपने आप में कॉम्प्लिकेटेड चीज है जिसको बनाना है, क्वालिटी डिलीवर करना है, आफ्टर डिलीवरी उसकी जो मैनेजमेंट है, जो प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजमेंट है, उसका वो प्रॉपरली करना है, क्योंकि अल्टीमेटली उसमें ह्यूमन बीइंग्स रह रहे हैं, क्योंकि जो रहने वाली फैमिलीज हैं उनका जो ब्रांड के लिए जो एक रिस्पेक्ट है वो खत्म नहीं होना चाहिए। क्योंकि अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग को लेके लोगों के दिमाग में पहले ही बड़ा मिथ रहता है कि अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग है, इट मींस क्वालिटी कॉम्प्रोमाइज हुआ होगा, यानी एक बड़ा टैगलाइन है नीचे। लेकिन मैं आपको बिल्कुल श्योर करना चाहता हूं, एक तो अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग का कॉन्सेप्ट मैंने बदला है कि ये विद इन सिटी अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग है, ये सिटी से 50 किलोमीटर आगे की अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग नहीं है, जो नॉर्मली अभी तक हम सुनते आए हैं कि जब भी हम अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग की बात करते हैं तो ये क्योंकि जहां सिटी है, सिटी से 50 किलोमीटर आगे है, 70 किलोमीटर आगे है, और वहां तक का जो ट्रांसपोर्टेशन है उसके अंदर ही जो लेने वाला कस्टमर है वो अपना पूरा दिन खराब कर लेता है। लेकिन इस मिथ को खत्म किया है कि विद इन सिटी अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग प्रोवाइड कराई है, और दूसरा क्वालिटी बेस प्रोवाइड कराई है। जितनी भी चीजें हम इन प्रोजेक्ट्स में यूज कर रहे हैं, जो टेक्नोलॉजी बाहर जो कंट्रीज में यूज होती है लाइक चाइना, हांगकांग, सिंगापुर में, वो टेक्नोलॉजी हमने इंडिया में प्रोवाइड कराई है, जिससे क्योंकि जब आप इतनी मास हाउसिंग बना रहे हैं तो जो क्वालिटी है उसके अंदर आप किसी भी लेवल पे यानी कॉम्प्रोमाइज मोड नहीं बना सकते, बिकॉज उसमें अगले 50 साल के लिए उसके घर बना रहे हैं। तो मोस्टली जितनी अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग है वो सारी हमारी एल्युमिनियम बूम शटरिंग से बन रही हैं, तो जो क्वालिटी है वो वन ऑफ द बेस्ट क्वालिटी है, जैसी आपकी नॉर्मल हाउसिंग की होती है। सो मुझे लगता है कि शायद 3 से 5 साल का पीरियड भी बहुत कम है, अगले 10 साल का भी अगर आप मुझसे पूछें तो मैं कहूंगा डिमांड बहुत ज्यादा है, सप्लाई बहुत कम है, और भी डेवलपर्स को आना चाहिए इस क्षेत्र में जो आके इस डिमांड को पूरी कर पाए।
आई डोंट नो प्रदीप जी, आप बता सकते हैं कि नहीं पर आपका आईपीओ कब आने वाला है, ताकि हम अपने पैसे वैसे तैयार करके रखें?
I think so. It's a difficult question for me, क्योंकि बिकॉज आप जानते हैं कि सेबी की एक गाइडलाइन है, उसके अकॉर्डिंग मुझे चलना पड़ेगा, तो इस क्वेश्चन को मैं पास करना चाहूंगा।
बिल्कुल ठीक है, एब्सोल्युटली। निखिल, कमिंग टू यू, हाउ डू यू सी योर सेगमेंट ऑन द co-living for the next 3 to 5 years?
So, as an industry, I think we will follow that consistent expansion of 6 to 8% minimum. And given the way IT hiring is happening, this number can go above around 10 to 11% as well. And there is another factor which we are seeing early signs, which is de-densification. Earlier, people were very comfortable. Basically, square footage per person was lower. People were comfortable 4 sharing, 3 sharing, 5 sharing. Now we are seeing more and more move towards single room and double room. So I have a feeling, I mean, this is not based on any industry report, because we're yet to see how this pattern will pan out in the long run, but there is a good de-densification that's happening. Our single room portfolio has doubled in last 12 months or so. So there is a scope that this de-densification might expand the requirement of real estate, although number of people who are seeking co-living might just expand by 6 to 11%, 10%, depending on how IT hiring continues at this rigor or not. If it continues, then 10 north. If it not, otherwise 6 to 7. But it might give one push of 40 to 50% expansion from the real estate requirement standpoint, because square footage per person is increasing quite drastically. It could be COVID or hybrid work environment, because when you're taking meetings at home, you don't want too many people sort of in your place. So that's, I think, prima facie how I see the growth of the industry. Regarding growth of probably our business, like Pradeep ji said, the market is so large. We've just touched the surface, and Harsh also mentioned that it's like 3%, 4% capture. We are probably even lower as organized play. Zolo, Stanza, and a couple of others, we probably have captured less than 2%. So it's quite immaterial to us whether the market grows at 6 to 7% or 10% or 11%, because the existing market itself is enough for us to grow into and capture market share from. Our plan is to just stay focused, keep our head down, keep executing.
And Nikhil, are you seeing the price increase happen as well? I know you said is that the share in terms of volumes is increasing, but are you also seeing price growth?
Yes. Value to cost ratio obviously will never change. In the sense, as it's a market has a certain psychological perception of value to cost. So that more or less, I think it's same. It's just that people are willing to spend little more cost for little more value. So which is leading to higher prices, because suddenly a good housekeeping is something that you like. Suddenly a good Wi-Fi connection is something that you like. It's not like it ठीक है यार क्या फर्क पड़ता है. So that is something that we are clearly seeing. So just to take our numbers, if I'm not taking anyone else's numbers, we've seen a 14% increase in pricing. And there is subsequent increase a little bit in cost as well, because people are expecting some more things. But there is a 14% increase in pricing over last, I would say pre-COVID era, and over COVID, COVID era obviously it's 30% plus, but COVID was a depressed price, so I wouldn't count that as a benchmark. But pre-COVID we are 14% higher.
Harsh, finally, how do you look at the co-working over the next 3 to 5 years?
Extremely bullish and promising. Commercial office space as a sector has done extremely well in the last decade, right? It's had a multi-year run. And frankly, we see that flex space, which is a small percentage of the overall commercial office space, growing significantly faster, as an entire sector, that the next 5 years, as I mentioned, has at least another 70 to 80 million square foot of flex space to be added. It's just a question of which operator is best capitalized to take on more. So we are quite excited, and I think overall the entire industry will do very well in the next 5 years.
Yeah, and Harsh, it is quite, I would say, is difficult to comprehend. On one hand, people are saying is that hybrid is here to stay. People are going to continue to work from home. And on the other side, all of us are saying is that the demand for offices is perhaps going to be the best ever that we've seen. And clearly co-working piggybacks on the office absorption. It becomes difficult for any of the viewers to hear this, because IT companies are not forcing their employees to come in. Yet Harsh Binani is saying is that we're going to have the best year ever.
No, absolutely. It's slightly contradictory, and I'll try to make a little more sense out of this. That during the height of the pandemic, what really ended up happening, we had fear psychosis. A lot of companies in India, largely as an IT has driven commercial office space absorption story, at least to some extent, 55 to 60%. A lot of companies gave up their space. During this time, the business was still going very strong. So you continued hiring. While a lot of people who left you still replaced them. So when the world returned back to normal, and returned back to normal faster than what we'd anticipated, people were short on office space. At the other end of the spectrum, on the supply side, our supply friends, like a lot of developers, also did not see the burgeoning demand coming so quickly. And again, this is not a perishable product. It takes at least 3 to 5 years to get a great class property. So there's a massive mismatch in terms of the pent-up demand and the upcoming supply. And especially if you are in the right location, and if you're pricing your product right and giving a lot of flexibility, right, which is what the flexible workspace proposition, which a SmartWorks or any other operator would offer, then this makes for a very compelling offering. And especially when even you have concepts such as work from home or distributed workspaces, you still need space. And when you need space, which is for lesser time than the usual, then a product like flexible workspace becomes even more promising, because where will you go? You still need space. Whether you rationalize and say you need a space in Delhi, Noida, Gurgaon, you still need 3 offices. If you need people coming for 3 days a week, you still need space, even if you were to rotate. You can just rationalize, but you can't live without not having space.
Very good point. Very nicely explained, Harsha. Very excited. We discussed how we are reinventing the traditional asset classes, and how some of the alternatives, whether it's on the co-working or the co-living side, we're bringing them to the mainstream. All the three panelists remain very bullish, very excited. Clearly, 5 or 6 takeaways. One, it is a price-sensitive market, and all three said that. Starting from Pradeep ji, who's in affordable housing, Nikhil and Harsh said is that it is price-sensitive. So we're not too many frills attached. Obviously, it has to have the utility and it needs to be functionally meeting the requirement of the customer, but it is a price-sensitive market. Second is that COVID, and then Pradeep also mentioned government, both of them have acted as stimulus within their respective asset classes. Convenience to the customer is a common theme that emerged. Clearly, markets are big. And all three of them have said is that, we're sort of still just starting the journey. And, that's the scope that these businesses have, whether it's on affordable or co-living or co-working. Each one of them said is that there, as a respective organization, is a low single-digit percentage of where possibly the market can be, which is great because that, Nikhil, to you, one, that the economy and the industry is growing, but irrespective of that is that your respective organizations can grow, because if it's a low single-digit today share in that asset class, then there is a huge amount of growth trajectory that can be done. And finally, it's nice to see youngsters like Harsh and Nikhil focusing on profitability. I know Pradeep ji was always focused on profitability right from the day that he set it up way back in 2013-14. But Harsh saying is that from day one, he said Marwari Buddhi has worked in favor of the business. And Nikhil saying is that, frankly, in 22 days, we are going to make sure that all the assets within the portfolio are going to turn profitable. Some of them have already turned profitable for Nikhil. And Pradeep ji, you saying is that, I think you said it's about 20-25% margin business, which, it is difficult to comprehend affordable housing, which everybody thinks is like, how do you make money on that? And Pradeep ji saying, I actually make 20-25% margin, and the volumes are humongous. He said is that 5 or 10 Signature Global in NCR yet would be insufficient to be able to cater to the requirements that have come up. So fantastic. I know we're sort of running out of time. Sachin, any final words from you?
So, thank you, Mr. Puri, for moderating the session so well. Thank you, speakers, for sharing your views. So, this has been an enriching experience. The ideas and deliberation arising out of this conference would go a long way in addressing the challenges and reflecting a way forward. With these words, once again from Vicky and from all the panelists, I thank you all, speakers, and delegates and sponsors. So, thank you all.
Thanks, Sachin, for having us here.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Sachin.
it was amazing, I would say, session, and very engaging, and your energy is infectious. So thanks for hosting this very well.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Right. Thanks, Harsh.
Thank you.
Thanks for the
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.